One of the most important features in Star Citizen is finally gonna get an update, and it's going to do way more than just give the star map a new look.
Go ahead and pull it up in Armor of Glass, because this is gonna get really interesting.
It turns out it's going to be deeply connected to a ton of systems in the game, and the developers just recently revealed a bit more information about what we can expect to see from it and when we can expect to see it, which is thankfully a bit sooner than you or I maybe thought. But if you've played the game, you probably think just like I do that it couldn't come soon enough. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about it. Right after I tell you about the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, who go a step further with their threat protection service than other VPN services. It works against intrusive ads, malware, trackers, and malicious websites, and I've already personally used them for years after getting fed up with dealing with free VPNs that just didn't work, so now I can finally access IP-restricted websites when I work from abroad, or well, I want to protect my personal information. I also use the app on my iPad to let me watch shows like Strange New World Season 2, which isn't available in Taiwan for some reason, so that's also a good thing for me. So if you're looking for a reliable VPN service and you want to help support my channel, head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus get 4 additional months for free. That's nordvpn.com/morphologist, and if none of this really works for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. So CIG just recently revealed a bit more information about the star map that they talked about at Citizencon this year. But if you missed Citizencon, or if you've not brought yourself up to speed with what happened with the star map at that presentation, let me breeze over some of the key points from that presentation to bring you up to speed before we start talking about some of the new information that we just got, as it's going to be some pretty important context. So during the presentation, they showed off what Star Citizen's new map system is going to be like. You'll have to download the information of the surrounding area. In the demo, they showed you downloading it from a terminal in Crusader to get an idea of what the area around you looks like through a Mobiglass holo map system. Here you'll be able to do things like set waypoints to go to certain locations or identify key points of interest for, say, missions or just exploration purposes. In other words, a sort of GPS system in Star Citizen, which is going to be a big benefit for newer players or people who just want to navigate a new space that they've never been in before. Custom waypoints, of course, also has implications for selling those waypoints to other players for valuable deposits of minerals or maybe a great place to loot stuff. Then though, at the latter half of the presentation, they stepped onto a Carrack where it was revealed that the map system for ships and even the entire star system was all unified into a single system, which we later learned in the Citizencon event was done because it's connected to other parts of the game, like the new engineering mechanics, which I'll go over in another video. But that's probably the most important context you'll probably want to remember as we move forward to the new information that was revealed. So starting off with some of the new information we just learned, with how map information is obtained, it looks like you're not going to need to download everything from somebody else or a terminal. Just visiting a planet's surface will give you that information, but you won't be able to locate points of interest until you scan them down or visit them directly. For example, if you visit Pyro, you won't have a planet surface until you visit it, then the surface information will appear on your map. Although I suspect for this first iteration, and they didn't say this, I'm more speculating, that things like planets, moons, and general large points of interest like space stations will still appear on the map so that you can travel to them. They also added that the star map will eventually show multiple star systems, but for this first iteration, that won't be included. This is more of a distant wish for the feature itself. In terms of what information you'll be able to see about a planet through this system before you arrive, it won't be much more than what we currently have. Eventually, they want to allow you to create notes that you can create yourself for locations that you visit so that you can remember what's there, but they also will eventually look to connect the Galactopedia to the game where you'll be able to find more information about discovered areas. Although this seems a bit more distant. At least for the first iteration, it'll be very similar to what we currently have. Creating custom markers, though, do look like they will be in the first release. but it was explained that they plan on adding some additional quality of life features later on to allow you to organize them into folders so that you can filter them more easily. For the first iteration though, it looks like you're only going to be able to change the name of the marker, and that's all. And there wasn't any mention of being able to sell it, so I suspect that we're not going to be able to give those markers to anybody else just yet. I really hope that marker sharing and selling will eventually be a feature, and soon, because it'll be a great way to sell things that you've discovered, like valuable mineral deposits. They also expanded on the waypoint system for navigation assistance, where they explained that it'll be limited to a local area and it won't be really meant for long distances. So you'll be able to navigate, say, a local spaceport or a local landing zone, but it's not meant for working across different star systems or even apparently different planets. This means that you won't be able to create multi-quantum jump routes, which is probably going to be a bit of a downer for people who want to do long-distance trading. They explain though that they don't want people too focused on the map system and that they want people to actually play the game. Personally, I think this vision's maybe just a little bit too limited, so I hope they don't tie themselves down to this idea. I think when the game gets a lot bigger, when we have multiple star systems, that we're going to really want this kind of system to more easily navigate the universe, something like what EVE Online has. But it's a pretty distant concern, so we can revisit this at some point in the future. And on the subject of navigating, finding your own ship can sometimes be a bit of a hassle, so they also mentioned that you'll be able to locate your own ship, the one that's currently active, through this map system, but it's only going to work for your current active ship. Eventually, they're going to look into locating ships left out in the world, but this is only a distant thing that they're looking at sometime in the future. So initially, it's only going to be for your current ship. And on the subject of seeing ships on the map system, it looks like you're going to be able to see other people's ships through both the mobiGlas as well as your ship's radar and holotable display. And while this information is going to be a bit redundant at first, eventually they're going to separate the functionality of it for things like holotables, which will be more focused on sharing information between larger groups of people and doing things like seeing terrain information and maybe doing cross sections to be able to find mineral deposits. And that might be more specific to, say, a scanning ship or a ship like the Carrack, which is meant for surveying. One thing they didn't explain though was how the range of this is going to work. I'm very curious if we're going to be able to see someone flying around Microtech, for example, while you're in Hurston. Obviously, that would be super broken if that were the case, so there are clearly some kinks to work out before it makes its way into Star Citizen from the single-player Squadron 42 experience. And speaking of trying to figure out how to balance things, it does look like, at least for the first iteration, you will also be able to see other people opening and closing doors on a ship, even if you don't own the ship yourself. This could be a bit of a problem if you're doing something like attacking or defending a ship, but eventually they want to look into filtering this information out. They said it is possible, but for this first iteration, unfortunately you are going to see this information. To that end, they also added that you're going to be able to see people through the FPS scanning mode in the map system. So if you ping, they'll show up in the map, which is pretty interesting and will also, again, make this very important for PvP and PvE. But stuff like your player's emissions, sound, IR radiation, and so on will also determine whether or not you're visible. But I suspect, again, this is something that they're going to need to balance quite a lot. Eventually, things like hacking will also play a role in what people can see, and like I said, they do want to make it so that players who are boarding a ship, for example, won't get the same information as people defending, but this is more distant. For customization, they mentioned that this isn't going to be the focus for the first release, but they eventually will look into it. Initially, they're only going to have options for accessibility, such as a colorblind mode, and a number of different options for increasing text size so it's more legible. One thing that you might not realize that's connected to this new map system though is a potential landing UI, and to that end they did mention that they will look into it eventually, but it's not something that they're currently working on, so we're gonna have to wait just a little longer before we stop smashing into the sides of hangar doors. All in all then, there's a lot of great stuff that looks to be coming in the first iteration of maps, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I'm sure you're wondering now, when are we going to get this in our hands? Because today probably couldn't be soon enough. Well, luckily we have some information on that as well. If you've followed me for a while, you may recall me mentioning on multiple occasions that the slow development of Star Citizen in recent years is thanks in large part to the developers shifting nearly 100% of their focus to their single-player campaign, Squadron 42. Since Squadron, though, has achieved feature complete status this year, we've learned that they've officially now started moving people back to Star Citizen, and that their transition meetings are currently ongoing, with some of the teams already retasked and actively working on moving Squadron features over to Star Citizen. The map team did caution, though, that there's still a lot to account for before it can be fully integrated. Things like the replication layer and server meshing need to be taken into account before we can get it into our hands. Thankfully, they've said that they won't need to release all of this at once, and that they're going to be able to give it to us in pieces as they finish. And that checks out with a more recent developer panel on engineering, where they talked about them targeting Q2 for the new engineering stuff, which uses the map system. So it looks like we're going to start getting this stuff probably in the next 4 months, starting in Q1 next year and going into Q2 and Q3, with some possible testing happening in the tech preview channel. And this leaves me feeling pretty optimistic, actually, although part of me can't deny that I wish we had the map stuff today. I mean, anything would be better than what we have right now.
Disappointed!
At least, though, we know that one of Star Citizen's most important features is finally going to get fixed. But not just fixed, but improved on way beyond what we had originally imagined for it. What do you guys think, though? Are you excited for this new information and the update like I am? Let me know down below. And do you think we're going to see any testing before the end of the year? It's pretty tight, to be honest. It's only a month away. So I personally don't think we're going to see it before the end of the year. But maybe, maybe. Let me know. And of course, hope to see you guys in the next one.